The words hit me like a slap across the face. I stood frozen in the doorway of the storage room, frosting spatula still in my hand, as my sister Lila's voice drifted through the cracked door. "Clara doesn't really run things anymore," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "I mean, she tries, but let's be honest. I'm the one keeping this place afloat." Laughter rippled through the group of staff members gathered around her. My staff. People I'd worked alongside for 3 years. The cupcakes I'd been decorating suddenly felt meaningless in my hands. My chest tightened as I processed what I'd just heard. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a joke. This was betrayal, spoken casually over morning coffee in my own bakery. The bakery my mother and I built together. Flour dust under our fingernails, and dreams baked into every loaf. I stepped back from the door, my shoes squeaking softly on the tiles. Nobody noticed. They were too busy nodding along to Lila's performance. This new narrative where I was incompetent and she was the savior. My name is Clara Whitman, and this is my bakery. Or at least, it used to be. The memory came flooding back without warning. I was 12, standing in this exact kitchen, with Mom beside me. The early morning light streamed through the windows, turning the sugar on the counters into tiny diamonds. Mom's hands guided mine as we kneaded dough together, her voice soft and patient. "A bakery isn't just about bread, Clara," she'd said. "It's about giving people a moment of sweetness in their day." Remember that Lila was there too, 9 years old and covered in flour, laughing as she attempted to shape croissants. Back then, we were a team. Mom treated us equally, teaching us both the family recipes passed down from her grandmother. We learned to measure by feel, to know when dough was ready just by touching it, to understand that baking was as much art as science. But even then, subtle differences emerged. I was methodical, responsible, always making sure we cleaned up properly and checked the ovens twice. Lila was charming, creative, able to sweet-talk customers into buying extra pastries with just a smile. Mom loved us both fiercely, but I became her steady helper while Lila remained her spirited dreamer. When Mom died 2 years ago, the bakery became mine. The inheritance was clear, the legal documents straightforward. I'd been working here full-time since college, learning the business side while Lila traveled through Europe, sending postcards from Paris and Rome. I didn't resent her freedom. I loved this place, loved the rhythm of early mornings and the smell of rising bread. Transforming Mom's recipes into a thriving business felt like honoring her memory. Then, 6 months ago, Lila returned. She appeared at the bakery door one Tuesday morning, tanned and beautiful, her designer luggage stacked beside her. "I want to come home," she said, tears in her eyes. "I want to help you, Clara. I've been so selfish, traveling while you carried everything alone." Guilt crashed over me immediately. She was right. I had carried everything. Didn't she deserve a place here too? Wasn't this our family legacy, not just mine? I welcomed her with open arms, thrilled to share the burden and the joy. That was my first mistake. The changes started small. Lila suggested updating our social media presence, something I'd neglected while focusing on actual baking. "You're amazing at the craft," she said warmly, "but marketing isn't your strength. Let me handle that side." It seemed reasonable. Within weeks, she'd redesigned our Instagram, hired a photographer, and doubled our online followers. Customers started requesting items they'd seen on our feed. Business improved. I felt grateful. Then she moved into scheduling. "You're spread too thin," she insisted, taking the staff roster from my hands. "Focus on what you do best, the baking. I'll manage the people side." Again, it seemed helpful. I had more time in the kitchen, less time dealing with shift changes and personality conflicts. But gradually, I noticed staff members going to Lila first with questions, even about recipes. She'd started arriving before me each morning, already deep in conversation with the team when I walked in. My greetings felt like interruptions to meetings I wasn't part of. Still, I pushed down the discomfort. This was partnership, wasn't it? Sharing responsibility with family. The community tasting event was my idea. Every spring, local businesses set up booths in the town square, offering samples and connecting with neighbors. I'd planned our participation for months, developing a special lavender honey cake that incorporated ingredients from other local vendors. It was meant to showcase our commitment to the community, to the relationships Mom had built over decades. The morning of the event, I woke early and baked fresh samples, carefully packaging them in boxes decorated with our logo. When I arrived at our booth, Lila was already there, setting up displays and chatting with the early crowd. "Oh, Clara's here," she announced brightly as I approached. She helped with some of the prep work. Helped with prep work? I'd created the entire recipe, done all the baking, coordinated with the other vendors. But before I could correct her, she was launching into a story about how she'd developed this new direction for our bakery, emphasizing community partnerships and local sourcing. People nodded appreciatively, congratulating her on her vision. I stood there, holding my boxes, invisible. That night, I tried to talk to Lila about the event. We sat in the small apartment above the bakery, the space we now shared since she'd moved back to town. "I felt like you took credit for my work today," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice level. Her eyes widened with hurt. "Clara, that's not fair. I was just trying to present a united front, to show the community that we're a team." She reached across the table, taking my hand. "You've done so much for so long, carrying this whole place alone. I'm just trying to help shoulder the burden." Isn't that what you wanted? The guilt crashed over me again, exactly as she'd intended. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was so used to being in control that I couldn't accept help gracefully. "I'm sorry," I heard myself say. "You're right. I'm just tired." She squeezed my hand, smiling with apparent relief. "I know. That's exactly why you need me here. Let me take care of some things, Clara. You don't have to do everything yourself anymore." As she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, that uneasy feeling growing stronger in my chest. Over the following weeks, Lila's influence expanded like rising dough, filling every available space. She started meetings with staff without telling me, making decisions about menu changes and pricing. When I questioned her, she'd respond with that same wounded expression. "I thought we were partners now. I thought you trusted me." The worst part was watching my contributions disappear. In staff meetings, ideas I'd suggested privately to Lila would emerge from her mouth as her own innovations. The new scheduling system I designed was introduced as Lila's efficiency improvement. Even my mother's recipes started being attributed to family tradition, rather than specifically to Mom or me. I found myself doubting my own memories. Had I really created that lemon tart variation? Or had it been Lila's idea? Did I actually suggest expanding our catering service? Or was I just remembering Lila's proposal? The boundaries of my identity within the bakery blurred and faded, like words written in sugar dissolving in rain. At night, I'd lie awake wondering if I was losing my mind or just finally losing control. I started keeping a notebook, recording conversations and decisions. It felt paranoid, but I needed to trust my own perception again. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, I met with Angela and Marcus, our two longest-serving employees who'd worked with Mom. We sat at a corner table after closing, 3 coffee cups between us. "I need to ask you something honestly," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think Lila is trying to push me out?" The relief on their faces was immediate and telling. "We've been worried about saying something," Angela admitted. "She's been telling us to bring decisions to her, that you're too overwhelmed to handle daily operations." Marcus nodded. "She suggested last week that maybe you'd be happier just doing the baking, stepping back from management entirely. But Clara, this is your bakery. We all know that something crystallized in that moment. This wasn't my imagination or insecurity. This was real, calculated, and it had been happening right in front of me while I questioned myself. I wasn't crazy. I was being erased. Mom's recipe box sat on a high shelf in my bedroom, a wooden treasure chest filled with index cards written in her careful handwriting, recipes for her signature sourdough, the cinnamon rolls that made people drive from 3 towns over, the secret glaze that made our donuts legendary. These were never meant to be published or shared widely. These were our family's heart. I came home one afternoon to find Lila standing on a chair, reaching for the box. "What are you doing?" The words came out sharper than I intended. She startled, nearly losing her balance. "I was just going to photograph some of Mom's recipes for the website. You know, the heritage story angle. It'll be great for marketing." "No." The word felt foreign in my mouth. Too firm, too final. "Those stay private." Her expression shifted, hurt, transforming into something colder. "You're being selfish, Clara. These recipes could really boost our brand. Mom would have wanted to share them. Mom left them to me." I lifted the box down myself, holding it against my chest. "And I'm saying no." For 3 days afterward, Lila barely spoke to me. She mentioned my possessiveness to staff members, sighing about how hard it was to move forward when I clung to the past. But I kept the box locked in my room, the first real boundary I'd managed to hold. The memory surfaced one sleepless night, sharp and clear as broken glass. I was 15. Lila was 12. We'd both entered the regional baking competition, working for weeks on our submissions. I'd created an elaborate layered cake with delicate sugar flowers. Lila made cupcakes, pretty, but simple. When the judges announced the winners, my cake took first place. I was thrilled, already imagining Mom's proud smile. But at the awards ceremony, Lila approached the microphone with tears streaming down her face. She told the crowd that we'd worked on both entries together, that the cake was really a joint effort, and that she wanted to share the prize with me. The audience applauded her generosity. The judges looked moved, and I stood frozen, unable to contradict her public display, without looking ungrateful and petty. Later, Mom gently suggested I let Lila keep the ribbon and trophy. "She looks up to you so much, Clara." Sharing would mean the world to her. So I did. I shared my victory, my work, my moment, and Lila learned that tears and charm could rewrite reality, that my accomplishments could become hers with the right performance. The pattern had started so young, I'd almost forgotten it existed. The final straw came during the quarterly business meeting with our accountant and the building landlord. I'd prepared financial reports, growth projections, and renovation proposals for expanding our seating area. But when I arrived, Lila was already presenting, using my documents with her own commentary overlaid. "As you can see," she told them confidently, "under my management these past months, we've increased revenue by 18%. Clara's been handling the kitchen side, of course, but the business strategy has been my focus, my management, my focus." The words echoed in my skull. Mr. Peterson, our landlord, nodded approvingly. It's good to see strong leadership here. Your mother would be proud. Lila, something inside me snapped. Clean and irreversible. Not the hot rage I'd imagined, but something colder and more permanent. A door closing. A decision made. I sat through the rest of the meeting in silence, smiling blandly when appropriate, contributing nothing. Let her perform, let her claim credit, because I was done fighting for recognition in my own business. I was done explaining, justifying, and defending my existence. A new strategy was forming, quiet and precise, as a well-executed recipe. That evening, I began making changes, small ones, invisible to anyone not paying close attention. I started arriving an hour before Lila, reclaiming those quiet morning moments with staff. I personally scheduled the next month's shifts, politely, but firmly, taking the roster back. I've got this, I told Lila, simply when she protested. I stopped sharing my ideas with her privately, instead, bringing them directly to team meetings, where they were documented with my name attached. I reorganized the kitchen workspace, putting my tools and Mom's old equipment in prominent positions. I updated our business licenses and permits, ensuring my name remained primary on all legal documents. Each action was calm, methodical, without drama or confrontation. I wasn't fighting Lila. I was simply reclaiming what had always been mine, piece by piece, like gathering scattered puzzle pieces and returning them to their proper places. She noticed, of course, but what could she say? I wasn't being aggressive or unreasonable. I was just doing my job. Her job, actually. The job she'd been pretending to do while I baked in the back. Angela and Marcus became my quiet allies. We didn't plot or scheme. We just communicated clearly. I made sure to acknowledge their contributions publicly, to include them in decisions about recipes and service. I listened when they mentioned problems and addressed issues immediately. Slowly, the staff's attention shifted back toward me, like plants turning toward sunlight. They started knocking on the kitchen door with questions instead of seeking Lila in the office. They asked for my approval on schedule changes. They brought me customer feedback and suggestions for new menu items. I responded with patience and genuine interest, remembering that these people had been loyal to this bakery long before Lila returned. They'd known my mother. They'd watched me grow up here. They'd seen me transform grief into purpose after Mom died. Lila might have charm and social media skills, but I had history, competence, and authentic relationships. And those things, I was learning, couldn't be faked or stolen. They could only be earned through years of showing up, doing the work, and treating people with respect. I reclaimed a corner of the bakery that had become cluttered with Lila's marketing materials and promotional displays. Over a weekend, I cleared it out and created a heritage wall. I hung photos of Mom in her apron, of the bakery's original opening day in 1987, of me as a child learning to braid challah bread. I displayed some of Mom's actual tools, the wooden spoons worn smooth by decades of use, the pastry cutter with her initials carved in the handle, the timer shaped like a chicken that had become our unofficial mascot. I added my own photos too, images of me winning that long-ago baking competition, of my culinary school graduation, of the day I officially took over as owner. The morning light hit this corner perfectly, illuminating everything with a warm glow that felt like Mom's presence returning. Customers noticed immediately, pausing to look at the photos and ask questions about the bakery's history. And for the first time in months, they directed those questions to me, not Lila. I answered them with stories only I could tell, reclaiming my narrative one conversation at a time. The summer festival was approaching, our town's biggest event of the year. I'd been preparing for months, developing special items and coordinating with other vendors. This time, I documented everything carefully, sent emails from my account, made sure everyone knew these were my initiatives. When the festival arrived, I was ready. Our booth featured a tasting menu of Mom's signature recipes alongside my own innovations. I'd created small cards explaining each item's history, many of them including memories of Mom teaching me these techniques. Lila tried to take her usual position as front person, but I stepped forward first. "Welcome to Whitman Family Bakery." I greeted customers warmly. "I'm Clara Whitman, the owner and head baker. Let me tell you about what we've prepared today." I spoke about Mom, about learning to bake at her side, about the years I'd spent perfecting these recipes. I introduced Angela and Marcus, crediting them by name for their contributions. I was present, visible, undeniable, and Lila stood to the side, her smile growing tighter as the day progressed, and she realized the spotlight had shifted away from her permanently. I started a blog on our website, writing weekly posts about recipes, techniques, and bakery life. Each post included photos of me working, my hand shaping dough or decorating cakes. I wrote about Mom's legacy, about the challenges of running a small business, about the joy of creating something people loved. The response was overwhelming. Customers commented with their own memories of the bakery, of Mom, of specific items they'd loved over the years. Local newspapers picked up some of my posts, interviewing me about traditional baking methods and family businesses. My social media presence grew organically, built on authentic connection rather than polished marketing. People wanted realness, and I gave them that, sharing both successes and struggles, inviting them into the genuine story of this place. Lila's carefully curated Instagram aesthetic suddenly felt hollow by comparison. One evening, she confronted me about the blog. "You're undermining everything I built on social media," she accused. I looked at her calmly. "I'm just sharing my own story, Lila. There's room for both of us to have a voice, but we both knew there wasn't. Not really. Not when only one of us had earned the right to speak for this bakery." Late one night, doubt crept in. I sat in the darkened bakery, moonlight streaming through the windows, and wondered if I was becoming like her. Was I being manipulative, calculating, cruel? Was I pushing my own sister out, just as she tried to push me? The questions circled like vultures. But then I remembered the difference. I wasn't stealing Lila's accomplishments or erasing her identity. I was reclaiming my own. I wasn't lying about who did what work. I was finally telling the truth, after months of silence. I wasn't trying to make her invisible. I was simply refusing to be invisible myself. There was a difference between asserting yourself and destroying someone else, between setting boundaries and violating them, between claiming what was yours and stealing what wasn't. I wasn't Lila. I was me, and being me, standing up for myself, protecting what I'd built, that wasn't wrong. That was survival. That was strength. That was necessary. The doubt dissolved like sugar in hot water, leaving clarity behind. I knew what I had to do, and I knew why I was doing it. That was enough. The shift became visible to everyone. During a staff meeting about upcoming catering orders, Angela directed a question to me instead of Lila. Then Marcus did the same. Then Becca, our newest hire. Lila interjected several times, trying to steer the conversation. But people's eyes kept returning to me. They asked for my approval, my input, my decision on disputed points. It wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was simply the natural consequence of months of me rebuilding trust and demonstrating competence while Lila had been focused on appearances. After the meeting, I overheard 2 staff members talking in the kitchen. "It feels better," one said quietly. "Like things are back to normal." "Clara's really the heart of this place." Lila heard it too. I saw her face tighten, saw the calculation in her eyes as she processed what was happening. She was losing ground, and she knew it. That afternoon, she was unusually quiet. Her phone, constantly in her hand, typing furiously. I suspected she was reaching out to people, trying to build her own narrative, to explain why things were changing. But gossip couldn't compete with reality, and reality was increasingly clear. Lila's next move was aggressive. She scheduled a meeting with our suppliers and the bank, announcing plans for a major expansion, a second location across town. She presented elaborate mock-ups and financial projections, all done without my knowledge or input. "This is the future of Whitman Bakery," she declared confidently. "We're ready to grow." But I'd been preparing for something like this. Over the past weeks, I'd quietly met with the same people, strengthening relationships, making sure they understood the ownership structure, ensuring they knew who actually held decision-making authority. When the bank manager asked for my thoughts on the expansion, I smiled calmly. "These are interesting ideas, but they're premature. I've actually been developing a more sustainable growth plan that I'd be happy to share with you next week. I already had the permits. I already had the funding lined up. I already had the real plan, one that built on our existing strengths rather than overextending ourselves." Lila's face went pale as she realized I'd outmaneuvered her, quietly and completely. Her grand gesture collapsed like a fallen soufflé. The change in customer behavior was subtle but unmistakable. People started specifically requesting my signature items. The lemon lavender scones I'd developed, the chocolate croissants I'd perfected over years of experimentation. They'd ask if Clara had made the bread today, if these were Clara's cinnamon rolls. They wanted my creations, my expertise, my touch. When Lila tried to claim she'd helped develop these recipes, longtime customers would gently correct her. "No, Clara's been making these for years. Since before you came back, it wasn't mean-spirited. It was just fact." But each small correction chipped away at Lila's constructed narrative. She couldn't rewrite history when dozens of people remembered the truth. I watched her frustration grow as she realized that charm couldn't overcome years of authentic presence. She could be likable, she could be convincing, but she couldn't make people forget reality. And reality does that. This bakery existed because of my work, my dedication, and my inheritance of Mom's legacy. She'd tried to claim a story that wasn't hers to tell. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning. I arrived early to find Lila already there, arms crossed, face set with determination. "We need to talk about the bakery's direction," she said firmly. "This dual management isn't working." I set down my bag slowly, meeting her eyes. "You're right. It's not working." She looked momentarily surprised that I'd agreed. "I think we should formalize the partnership," she continued. "Equal ownership, equal decision-making authority. It's only fair after everything I've contributed." This was it, the moment she'd been building toward, her play for permanent control. I took a breath, feeling surprisingly calm. "No," the word hung in the air between us. "This is my bakery, Lila. Mom left it to me. You're welcome to work here, but as an employee, not a partner. Those are the terms." Her mouth opened, then closed. Color flooded her cheeks. "After everything I've done, you're going to cut me out?" "I'm not cutting you out. I'm clarifying the reality that's always existed. This is mine. It was always mine." She stared at me like I'd slapped her, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. Silence filled the empty bakery. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the flour dust dancing in the air. I felt lighter than I had in months. Lila returned 3 days later, subdued and tight-lipped. She didn't apologize, but she stopped undermining me. She did her assigned tasks, managed social media when asked, and kept her opinions to herself, unless specifically requested. The dynamic had fundamentally shifted. I didn't gloat or punish her. I simply did my job with clarity and confidence. I ran meetings, made decisions, and signed off on major changes. I acknowledged her contributions when they were real, but didn't allow credit stealing or narrative manipulation. The staff responded with visible relief. The tension that had permeated the bakery for months dissolved like morning mist. Work became enjoyable again. Customers noticed the change in atmosphere, commenting on how welcoming the space felt. "Whatever you're doing," one regular told me, "keep doing it. This place has its heart back." Over the following weeks, Lila's role naturally diminished. She started coming in later, leaving earlier, spending more time on her phone than engaged with the work. I suspected she was looking for other opportunities, other places where her talents might fit better, and I was okay with that. I'd learned that love didn't require sacrifice of self. Lila's reputation in town shifted gradually. People who'd initially been charmed by her enthusiasm started noticing inconsistencies in her stories. The community is small, memories are long, and truth eventually surfaces. I never badmouthed her. I didn't need to. I simply continued being myself, being present, being honest. At a town council meeting about supporting local businesses, several people specifically praised my leadership and dedication to preserving Mom's legacy. Lila wasn't mentioned. That absence said everything. I saw her sitting in the back of the room, her expression unreadable. Part of me felt sad for her. She'd returned home hoping to claim something that wasn't hers, and now she was discovering the cost of that attempted theft. But I'd learned a hard lesson over these months. I couldn't save her from consequences. I couldn't protect her from her own choices, and I couldn't sacrifice my own well-being to spare her discomfort. She would have to find her own path, one that didn't involve erasing mine. That was her work to do, not mine to fix. 6 months after reclaiming my bakery, everything had transformed. We'd expanded our catering services successfully, using the careful growth plan I'd developed. I'd hired 2 new bakers who shared my passion for traditional techniques. Angela had been promoted to assistant manager, a role she'd earned through years of loyalty and competence. The bakery thrived financially and emotionally. Customers told their friends about us, not because of slick marketing, but because the food was exceptional and the atmosphere was genuine. I'd started teaching weekend baking classes, sharing Mom's techniques with a new generation, passing on the knowledge that had been entrusted to me. These classes filled quickly, with waiting lists stretching months ahead. People wanted to learn from someone who had roots, history, and authentic expertise. Lila had finally given notice 3 weeks earlier. She was moving to Portland, taking a marketing position with a tech startup. Our parting was cordial, but not warm. We both understood what had happened between us, and we both knew the relationship had changed permanently. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something, but it would have to be based on honesty rather than manipulation. I stood in the bakery early one Sunday morning, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the windows exactly as they had in my childhood. My hands moved through familiar motions, kneading dough with the rhythm Mom had taught me decades ago. The building was silent except for the hum of the ovens and my own steady breathing. This space was completely mine now, in a way it hadn't been even before Lila returned. because now I knew its value. I knew what I'd almost lost. I knew the cost of not setting boundaries, and I knew the strength required to defend what mattered. The dough beneath my hands felt like more than flour and water. It felt like reclaimed identity, like self-respect given form, like the physical manifestation of lessons learned through pain. I thought of Mom, of what she'd want me to understand from all this, and I realized she'd probably known all along that I needed to learn to stand up for myself, to value my own worth, to stop sacrificing my needs for others' comfort. The sweetest revenge wasn't payback or punishment. It was this, finally taking my own seat at the table I'd built with my own hands. Finally living fully in my own life, without apology or compromise. Finally understanding that protecting what's mine isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's healthy. It's love. Properly understood. The dough rose beneath my hands, and I smiled. I was home, truly home, in every sense of the word.